All right. So sometimes do you just have to get out of your own way, right? And where I'm going with this is a book review over Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday, right? And so this book did a lot for me, to be honest, right? Um, a lot of the times your own ego kind of gets in your own way, right? And obviously, except under it can be useful sometimes, but regardless, trying to stay on topic. So, to take a quote from the front cover and why you really want to read this book, right? So, you will be less invested in the story you tell about your own specialness, and as a result, you will be liberated to accomplish the world changing work you've set out to achieve, right? And so, basically, what you'll learn from this book, right? More or less. And so he really breaks this down into three different kind of sections, right? Or I guess phases, right? And how ego or your ego basically affects you in each one of these three phases, right? Basically, kind of phases of your life, so to say, right? So, like, you're either aspiring to do something, you've achieved success in that, or you failed in that, right? And it's kind of whenever you're done with one topic or succeed and then fail, whatever the case may be, you kind of come up with something else, right? And so that's really where he's going. So who is Ryan Holiday? He's a college dropout who basically apprenticed under Robert Greene. If you know him, he's written the 48 Laws of Power, the Laws of Human Nature, the Art of Seduction, I think is what it is, and then the Art of War, or not Art of War, something War as well. I haven't read that one, but anyways, and so, but he eventually went on and he advises companies like Google, Taser, etc., and he was the director of marketing of American Apparel, right? And this book itself was published in 2016 and is about 220 pages. It's not too long, really, but I like it. It's really kind of separated into a lot of little sections, and so it's really easy to read bit by bit, right? So you don't have to sit there and read for an hour to kind of complete one whole idea. It's pretty quick. So what are some things that you'll learn from this book, right? And so early in our careers, to take a direct quote, it impedes learning and the cultivation of talent. With success, it can blind us to our faults and so future problems. In failure, it magnifies each blow and makes recovery more difficult. At every stage, ego holds us back, right? And so that's really it, right? And so he has it again in three different phases. We'll start with aspire, right? And try to get a little bit more into it, right? And so one of his things that really helped me, because I'm obviously pretty young, especially with the aspire phase. That's kind of where I am with a lot of my things, right? The whole to be or to do. And this one really kind of solidified a lot of the decisions I've made, especially in the past 6 months, right? I made a couple very large life-changing decisions in that time. At least, yeah. Anyways, that's really the whole point of this little section, is to be or to do. Like, do you really want to... One thing I've noticed, and this book helped me kind of figure out, is a lot of the times, and what a lot of people, it seems, the reasons why they want to do certain things is really more ego-driven, in terms of they want to be somebody, right? They're more concerned about the status and so on than anything else. For example, it's like you want to be, I don't know, CEO, whatever it happens to be, right? And it's not, they tend to make decisions, and the reasonings for wanting to do that is more purely based on kind of appeasing their own ego than anything else. And that's kind of where he goes. And now obviously he does it a lot more eloquently. That's why he wrote the book. But some things to note about that specifically, and to quote directly, appearances are deceiving. So having authority is not the same as being an authority. Having the right and being right are not the same either. Being promoted doesn't necessarily mean you're doing good work, and it doesn't mean you are worthy of promotion. They call it failing upward in such bureaucracies, right? So impressing people is utterly different from being truly impressive, right? So kind of, do you want to be something, or do you want to actually do something with your life? Is kind of where I go with that one. One thing that he always also talks about in this aspire phase is becoming a student, right? And in the success section, he always says, always be a student, because you want to continuously be a student if you want to remain successful, right? That's not something you can't just get there, be done with it, and expect to stay there for the rest of your life necessarily, right? You always have to be constantly learning. And that's one thing that if anyone's followed kind of what I've done with the channel, and also where I started with the website as well, that's really the whole point of it, right? Of me doing any of this content in general, right? It's just kind of it's pursuing my own interests, in a way. And I don't really talk about this much, but it really goes directly with this part of the book, so it's topical. But the original website name was alwayslearningandimproving.com, right? And because all my other ones that I could think of were already taken. I think it was like Forever Student is like some language learning thing, or I don't know. It doesn't matter, but just, I guess, a little background information on that as well, right? And so another thing to keep in mind, especially when you're aspiring to do something, is to get out of your own head, right? Because a lot of the times, especially when and I dealt with the past couple years, to be honest, especially when I had just graduated college, went into a new field, so on, and became so focused on career, and that's all I did, literally, which is pretty easy living on your own as a young man, right? And so that's literally all I did, period. I didn't do anything for fun. I didn't spend time trying to cultivate friendships or anything, and a lot of the friendships that I had from college deteriorated rather quickly, especially some very close ones, because I let my ego get into certain ways, or get in the way. So that one was learned the hard way, as some things are, but it is what it is, and so things like that. Anyways, another thing about the aspire phase is the danger of early pride. Again, being too prideful too early, or even having pride to begin with. So for that, I'm going to take a direct quote again. So you need only to care about your career to understand that pride, even in real accomplishments, is a distraction and a deluder. So if you're more focused on the pride itself, you're going to eventually kind of be taken away, and your focus is going to move from the actual work itself and doing what you do, and it's going to shift more into, I guess, making you feel like you did something, right? When in reality, it's like no one really cares what you did yesterday in the grand scheme of things. It's the act of doing things all the time sort of thing. Obviously, what I just said is kind of it's meant to be more of a long-term thing. It's not like you're literally working 24/7 and never sleeping and that sort of thing. Is not where I'm going. It's more of the long-term trajectory. It's like you're actually actively doing something with your life, and you're not spending months and months at a time not doing anything. I guess consistently. I guess depending on whatever the case may be. Anyways, so on to the next section, success, right? I already talked about always being a student, and so figuring out what's important to you, right? So one thing to note is we're never happy with what we have. We want what others have. We want to have more than everyone else. We start out knowing what is important to us, but once we achieved it, we lose sight of our priorities. Ego sways us and can ruin us, right? And so you tend to, once you become successful, you want something else, right? You have to move on to something else, right? But you end up losing sight of your priorities slowly over time, even if it's not too long, if you don't pull your head up every once in a while. And that's one thing I've noticed the past few years in myself as well, right? And where that goes is learning how to manage yourself, right? Which is one thing I've been working on consistently since, I guess, the past 4 years or so. Sometime junior year of college is when that really kind of started, and I tried to focus on it, right? Right. Let's see if I can find a decent quote for that, but that's pretty much it. It's an active management, right? And so, like he says, as you become successful in your own field, your responsibilities may begin to change. Days become less and less about doing and more about making decisions. Such is the nature of leadership, right? And where it goes on further is what matters is that you learn how to manage yourself and others before your industry eats you alive. Okay, especially as you get higher and higher up there, that tends to happen. Kind of getting into closing, talking more about how your ego affects you in failure. And so one thing to note, and one thing that really hit home for me, is this concept of alive or dead time, right? Because especially now I'm kind of in this transition between career fields to where I got it months before I leave for my next one, right? And so there's nothing like, there's literally just waiting. And that's pretty much it. And so it's really what you kind of do with this, what we call dead time, or what I guess and I think it was Robert Greene who came up with the idea, or at least that's what he says in the book. It's what you do in that dead time. Like, there's other things you can be doing that doesn't necessarily have to be for your career, right? It's improving yourself, it's improving whatever, learning more, having a bit more perspective, and that sort of thing. And that's kind of where I've been going with the YouTube channel and stuff in this kind of dead time period for me, right? And so I think he also uses the example. That's one thing he does throughout the book, is with each kind of concept, he gives a little bit of a story. I mean, that's how people learn and how you remember things, just through narrative. So he uses the story of Malcolm X and his time in prison for this kind of concept of alive versus dead time, right? And so, to take a quote, "Dead time is revived when we use it as an opportunity to do what we've long needed to do. As they say, this moment is not your life, but it is a moment in your life. So how will you use it?" Right? You don't have to actively always be doing stuff, right? It doesn't mean you can't take a break every once in a while, but it's something to keep in mind, right? And last couple things. So one of the other sections is the effort is enough. Basically, I mean, you can only do so much, right? But to kind of finalize with a quote from that, "The only real failure is abandoning your principles. Killing what you love because you can't bear to part from it is selfish and stupid. If your reputation can't absorb a few blows, it wasn't worth anything in the first place," right? And so that's, beyond anything, remain principled. That's one thing I've noticed, at least me personally, holds a lot more respect for than anything else, right? So like, I had a good friend in college who we disagreed on almost absolutely everything, but he was principled in his beliefs, right? I didn't agree with those principles, but the mere fact that he was a principled person and he had his own reasons, though I didn't agree with them, I respected, right? And we were able to function as pretty good friends, actually, regardless of beliefs. But anyways, I'm going to leave this one here. Let me know what you guys think about the book itself. I know it's pretty popular. This is one that I actively go through on a regular basis. I've been through it once, but I kind of sit there, and this is one that I like to sit. Like I said, the sections are really short, only a couple pages, and so it's like I'll read one and just kind of let it marinate for a day or two, and just kind of think about that specifically and that sort of thing. But that being said, I'm going to leave this one here. I'll put a card up in the corner for other book reviews, and also the one on the book I did about extreme ownership by Jocko Willink and Leif Babin, if I remember correctly. That'll be in one of the corners. I don't remember if it's mirrors it or not whenever it's published, but there's that. It does have similar concepts to this book, obviously from a different perspective. But anyways, I'm going to leave this one here. So I hope you guys have a good night, and I'll see you on the next one.